Now, we're trying to put you on the road to mastery of Tomoe-nage. It's a throw or a takedown, which I believe, if you spend time mastering, can completely transform your standing game. It can take you from someone who basically only pulls guard to someone who can throw people in the standing position with confidence and power and gain an initial 2 points at the onset of a match, or if the match goes to standing during any period into the match, you can throw at any given time and pick up an additional 2 points and take top position on an opponent. Your path to mastery is going to go in two different routes. The most important route will be the Yoko or side Tomoe-nage. Okay, there's no question that in modern competition, side Tomoe-nages account for the vast majority of success. There's no question about that. The reason is simple. It's much easier to get your opponent's head over your head by falling across underneath your opponent than it is to fall straight backwards. Nonetheless, I'm asking you now not to ignore the classical, old-fashioned, forward or front Tomoe-nage. It still has a useful place in your arsenal. And it's more closely related to the Tomoe-nage that you're used to using as a sweep from open guard. So many of you may actually find it a little bit easier because there's more overlap between the old-fashioned front Tomoe-nage than there is with the Yoko Tomoe-nage between standing and ground positions. The drawback, the reason why the classic Tomoe-nage has become less popular is because it is more difficult to draw your opponent's head forward. But it's not impossible, and it can be done if you know what you're doing. There are still a few people who specialize in this throw, and they do just fine in international competition. This was the original form of Tomoe-nage, and if you look at old American popular entertainment, like the original series of Star Trek, I'm showing my age on this, my God, you will see this throw performed quite often in American cinema and in the classical form where someone drops underneath somebody and throws them directly over their head. But with all comedy aside, this can be a very useful throw in modern day competition if you know what you're doing. But it can also degenerate into a guard pull if you don't know what you're doing. So let's pay careful attention now to the mechanics of the move. Okay, we know that the central problem of any Tomoe-nage is to get my opponent's head directly over my head. If I use a side Tomoe-nage, that's pretty easy. Because I fall so close, let's make a strong body, I fall so close to my opponent's body that his head ends up directly over mine almost by without even thinking about it. Okay, that's why most modern players today throw with this method. The old-fashioned method, the original method, just stand facing me here, strong body, involves falling directly in front of my training partner. And the danger now is that his head will be so far away from me that it's really hard for me to bring him forward into the throw. Okay? That's why side Tomoe-nage has largely replaced the classical front Tomoe-nage in modern day competition. But there are some really good tricks to get his head over your head if you know what you're doing. The first trick, and I believe this is the most important one, is the jump step. But before I show you the jump step, I'm going to give you a word of advice. If you're going to start throwing people with front Tomoe-nage, there's going to be one thing that screws you up more than anything else from the start. It's going to be your opponent. If he's talented and athletic, he's going to do cartwheels out of your Tomoe-nage. I'll demonstrate what I mean. Let's come a little bit closer to the camera. If I take classic sleeve lapel, like so, and I throw with a classic front Tomoe-nage, his arm is free to base on the floor. So if I go in on my training partner from the front and I lift, he can put his hand on the mat and cartwheel out. And you see this happen all the time. Why can he do that? Because he's got a free hand. The only thing holding his hand to his lapel is his own hand. And he's at liberty just to let go and put his hand on the floor and he can cartwheel out. Happens all the time. Okay? So what I'm going to recommend to you, if you're going to specialize in front Tomoe-nage, throw with double sleeve grips. Throw with double sleeve grips. So if we're right versus right and we grip, I currently have one sleeve and one lapel. If I'm going to throw with this method, come down the body and grip the sleeve. Anywhere from above the elbow to below the elbow. Grip me.
Okay? And throw like this. Control his two sleeves. Now, when he goes to cartwheel out, you can close his sleeves and make it very hard for him to cartwheel. Okay? You do lose control of the head. Okay? That's the sacrifice you're making. When I grip here, I have more direct control of Giancarlo's head. But I have no control of Giancarlo's left hand so he can cartwheel. So what I'm going to recommend to you, come down the body and grip here. Give up a little head control and take away his ability to cartwheel. Okay? Now we play a game of push-pull, and I get him into a jigotai stance like so. Okay? Now I'm ready to throw. I got both sleeves, and I'm ready to throw. So that's my advice to you. If you're going to start with the classic Tomoe-nage, be prepared to go more with double sleeve grips rather than the old sleeve lapel. Otherwise, talented opponents will always just plant a hand and cartwheel, and you'll get frustrated. Okay? So that's my first piece of advice. Now, once you get that piece of advice, you need a mechanism to bring his head over your head. Giancarlo is very strong for his body weight. He's a strong, athletic kid. I'm going to show you how he can just stuff my front Tomoe-nage before it even begins. Okay? John, just make a strong, resistant body, square stance. Okay. I got grips on him. I'm going to go sleeve lapel, and I'm just going to sit back and put my foot in his hip. Look how Giancarlo, grip it high, my try to sit, buddy. He's just going to literally pull my ass off the floor. So I step in, I plant my foot, and he just pulls me right up off the mat. Okay? He's a strong kid. He can do that quite easily. So I fell back. I had no effect on his balance. I didn't bring his weight onto my toes, onto his toes at all. I couldn't bring his head over my head, and he just pulled me up, and your Tomoe-nage just went straight to hell. How can we avoid that kind of embarrassment? No problem. We're going to make use of what we call the falling step. Okay? The falling step for the jump step. The jump step from front Tomoe-nage is designed to get our opponent's head moving towards us, like a strong base, deep heart. From here, I'm going to take my foot in towards my training partner, and I get my foot ready to go on his belt. Okay? Now, you guys remember what I said before. Never put your foot on first and then try to sit down. That's just a disaster. It's just embarrassing. Okay? We have to be able to put the foot on as we go down. But what I do is I take a jump between his feet. Okay? I'm just going to show the jump now. I'm not going to throw Giancarlo. Watch Giancarlo's head as I take the jump. It brings his head directly over mine. This doesn't look like much, but it has the deepest consequences for your ability to succeed with this throw. It's kind of like jumping to guard. Not jumping to lock around his leg, but just jumping to a guard position, an open guard position, strong body. So what I do is I have a foot forward. This foot here is going to go on his hip. And look how I take a little jump. That jump brings his head right over my head. If I were able to get my foot to his hip, now his head's right over my head. And I can start throwing people. Okay? Now, we grip up. Here's my first grip. He grips up. I grab onto his sleeves. So we have double sleeve grips. Now, I put him into jigotai, like so. Now, I take my little step towards him. I get ready to go. And from this position, I jump inside his legs. And we throw him right over the top. That's our first cue. You're going to notice something interesting. I'm going to try my best to do this in slow motion. I may not be able to do it, but I'll try my best. I want you guys to pay attention to my feet, and you're going to notice something interesting. There is a quarter second where both my feet are off the ground. That's very important, so I'm going to say it again. There is a flash of time where both my feet leave the ground. So the only person holding me up is him. That means 100% of my body weight goes underneath his legs and pulls him forward. Imagine Giancarlo was standing like this in front of me with his hands down, like this. And from here, I threw a very heavy medicine ball into his arms. What would happen to his head? As I throw the ball and he catches it, his head would always come down to absorb the weight. Well, you're going to become the medicine ball. Okay? We lock up. I put a hand on. I double sleeve grip. From here, I get him bent over. Now, watch my feet. When I take this foot up, when I jump, None of my feet are on the ground. I become the medicine ball. And look what happens to his head. It's directly over mine. That, sir, is the key to the front tomoe-nage. It's that jumping step that for 1/4 of 1 second puts 100% of your body weight into your opponent's hands and forces them to stumble forward onto their toes into a hollow position. And what do we know about tomoe-nage? If you can bring them onto their toes in a hollow position, you can throw them. So once again, I come out, he grips. I grip. He grips. I double sleeve. I push, pull, put him into jigotai, or bent over position. Okay? I come in close. Now I take my foot off the ground and I jump. I jump between his legs. And I throw him through. By committing 100% of my body weight inside my opponent's legs and under a center of gravity, I bring his head forward and I put him in a position to be thrown. He's on his toes. I'm underneath the center of gravity. I'm lifting with the strength of my legs. He's going to fly. That is the jumping step. One more time. Here's why so many people fail with the classic tomoe-nage. They don't use the jump step. They just sit down. I get a grip. I get double sleeves. I position. Look what happens if I just sit. Make a strong, resistant body. If I just sit, his head never goes over my head. If I jump, now all my body weight goes over the top, and we get a genuine vaulting throw that brings our opponent's head over. We push the hands in, and he flies. And that is the secret of the jumping step, which is going to make you someone who's very successful with the front tomoe-nage. I'm trying to coach you guys through the front tomoe-nage, and it's my earnest belief that if you're going to call yourself one day a master of tomoe-nage, you must be strong at both of the main variations, the side tomoe-nage and the front tomoe-nage. Even though it's true that most of your successful throws will probably beat the side tomoe-nage, there's going to be times you want to score with the front tomoe-nage also. Now, in any competitive sport, one of the very best ways to succeed is to cheat. It works extremely well in all circumstances. Tomoe-nage is no exception. Let's look at a situation where I'm in a throwing position on my training partner. I'll have Giancarlo standing over me. Placido will just stand slightly to the side. Okay, Giancarlo, just stand right in front of me again. Take a crouch. From here, we have our standard grips, double sleeves. And from here, I have my foot in my training partner's hip, ready to throw. You guys know what my big spiel is. The spiel is, can I get my opponent's head over my head? And if the answer is yes, you can throw a lot of your opponents. Okay? Your opponent knows that. And so what they all do is they take their head and they try to move it away from you and put their weight on their heels. And as a result, it becomes very, very hard to throw successfully with tomoe-nage. Okay? Now, Placido, take a step behind Giancarlo and put your two hands on his back. Imagine if you had a way of cheating where you had an assistant come up behind your opponent, and as I attempt the tomoe-nage and Giancarlo resists by pulling back, Placido helps out by pushing. Do you see how now Giancarlo's head goes over my head? And as a result, it's easy to throw. Having an assistant behind your opponent would make it pretty much impossible for your opponent to resist the throw. The assistant would just push the head over the head, and you would succeed every time. Thank you, Placido. Thank you. Now, I got some good news for you. You can cheat like that every single time without an assistant. At least not a second assistant. But there is another form of assistant. And that is your other leg. The leg that we call the assisting leg. So, when Giancarlo is over me, do you remember how Placido was standing behind him and pushing on his shoulders? Well, what if instead of pushing on his shoulders with a second person, I push with my support leg on his buttocks? So here, I have my throwing leg in place.
But no longer is Placido necessary. I take my second foot and I put it right on his buttocks. And as I pull with my arms, I use my right foot as an assistant to bring him forward. My right foot takes the place of Placido. Instead of someone pushing on his shoulder blades, my foot pushes on his butt and brings his head directly over my head. And as a result, he's in the perfect position to be thrown. If I just had my foot on the floor and I just try to use my left foot, make strong resistance, Placido, it's very, very hard for me to throw Giancarlo. Strong, hard, strong. But if I just take my foot and bump his ass forward, now it's almost embarrassingly easy. I'm going to demonstrate this with Giancarlo's back to the camera so you can see more clearly my foot position. Please understand, guys, that I'm using my shoelaces of the foot in the buttocks. I'm not using the sole of the foot. It's my shoelaces bumping him forward. So here we have our standard grips. I have my throwing foot where it should be and my training partner set. Giancarlo resists, strong, and I'm trying hard to pull him in. I take my assisting foot and I put it right there in my training partner's buttocks. And I use that to push him forward from the back. And as a result, I can bring his head over my head and dump him. Placido, come back in frame. So again, we're in a throwing position. If I just had my foot on the floor and Placido put his hands on Giancarlo's back and pushed, that would bring his head over my head. Thank you, Placido. Instead of Placido being the working agent, I just used my foot. And that's what brings him forward and in a position to be thrown. Okay? That assisting foot will often mean the difference between success and failure. I urge you, if you are going to be someone who specializes in front tomoe, use that assisting foot every damn time you try the move. It's going to make a huge difference for you. It's like having a second assistant helping you into the throw. And it will not guarantee, but it will make it very, very likely that you'll be able to get your opponent's head over your head and complete the throw. Okay? I got good news for you. This happens almost automatically if you perform the jump step properly. Thank you, Placido. So let's start putting this in a combative context now. We're here with our training partner. He comes down and makes grips. I get my first grip on my training partner. He gets his grip. And I come through and I get double sleeves. Okay? Now, as I pull my training partner in, I'm in the perfect position now to step towards my man. I bring my foot in, strong resistance. And then from this position, I make my jump step. And that puts my foot as a sumigaeshi hook behind his buttocks. So when he tries to sink his weight back, it's like he's fighting my foot from the back. That brings his head directly over my head. And of course, as you know by now, that's the key to any tomoe. Is his head directly over my head. Now all I have to do is close the elbows and we take the man over. I'm going to demonstrate it now with his butt to the camera. Gripping. Just like so. I draw him in. From this position, I make my step. I get my foot ready. And the jump step takes me between his legs and gets our foot on his buttocks to assist. Now, guys, you will understand that I said place your shoelaces on your training partner's buttocks. Once again, I said place your shoelaces on your training partner's buttocks. I did not say place your shoelaces directly on your training partner's scrotum. Make sure you don't kick your training partner in the balls. This is a common mistake. Make sure you aim here, not right up the middle. You will quickly run out of training partners if you start doing this. Make sure we hook and bring him in. Don't kick your opponent, just draw him. What really does it is a combination of the extension of the leg and my knee coming to my chest. That's what draws his head directly over my head and creates the off balance you want to draw him over. If you learn to use this sumigaeshi hook
a kind of hybrid move between Tomoe-nage and Sumigaeshi. You're going to start throwing a lot of people that you wouldn't otherwise have thrown. People who are resisting by bringing the head back suddenly feel like there's a second person behind them, pushing them forward, head over head. And if you can get them head over head, you can throw anyone in the world. One more time. By the way, guys, have you noticed that the front Tomoe-nage is normally done out of a more static situation? The side Tomoe-nage is usually done out of movement. Front Tomoe-nage is usually much more static. Okay, so side Tomoe-nage, normally done out of movement. As you move around with the training partner, that's when side Tomoe-nage tends to work best. Front Tomoe-nage is normally done in much more static situations, which a lot of jiu-jitsu players tend to stand more static. Might be easier for you. So we come out, we get grips, and we tie up double sleeve grips. Then right from here, I just pop right inside my training partner's body and throw them through. And that is a front Tomoe-nage hybrid with Sumigaeshi to push your opponent's head over your head and get you into a successful throw. As I said earlier, my goal in this video is not just to show you Tomoe-nage. My goal is to get you out there in a competitive sparring or even competition environment throwing people who know you're trying to throw a Tomoe-nage and are actively resisting you. Okay, that's when the game gets interesting. Anyone can demonstrate a Tomoe-nage. It's not difficult to do. You can get 2 white belts, drill the move for 5 minutes, and they can throw reasonably well with a Tomoe-nage. The question gets interesting when you start saying, okay, black belt versus black belt. They know you what you want. Can you still do it? That's when the game gets interesting, and that's the direction we're trying to push you towards. In order to do this, as we said, you're going to have to master 2 main variants of Tomoe-nage. The side variant, which is arguably the more important of the 2, and now we're looking at the front variant. The central problem that you will have to overcome is always the same. How are you going to get your opponent's head directly over your head? It is, in most cases, more difficult with the front Tomoe-nage. So we're looking at ways to make it easier. We saw the idea of the jump step. We saw the idea of the Sumigaeshi hybrid, to use our foot to push our opponent's head forward over our head. Now let's look at a crucial element involved in completing the throw. This is the idea of opening elbows to bring our opponent's head towards us and bring him head over head, and then closing elbows so that he can't base out and put hands on the floor and cartwheel out of the move. The most common counter among elite athletes to any form of Tomoe-nage, and in particular front Tomoe-nage, is a cartwheel. They will put a hand on the floor and cartwheel out. And it's frustrating. You hit a move that almost worked and didn't work, didn't get a score. Okay, so let's look at the arm action of elbows out and elbows in. This is going to be an important part of your ability to throw with front Tomoe-nage. I'm going to demonstrate it first from the floor so you can see in slow motion what I'm talking about. Okay, let's take a 3/4 position relative to the camera. Okay, from here I have conventional double sleeve grips. I'm trying to encourage you guys to work with double sleeves whenever we work with front Tomoe-nage. If I work sleeve lapel, we can put this hand on the mat and cartwheel out. So this is our preferred grip in most cases. Now, when we work in this position, we've seen that we need a foot on the hip, and we generally work with a Sumigaeshi hook here at the buttocks to bring his head over our head. In addition, we start with high elbows. I take my 2 elbows and I flare them. When I combine my 2 knees to my chest and my 2 elbows to my shoulders, look what happens to Giancarlo's head. It comes over my head. But if I maintain high elbows, Giancarlo can take his hands on the floor, and when I try to lift him, he just cartwheels out of the move, and you end up with failure. Okay? So those opening of the elbows, kind of like a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing insofar as it brings the head over the head. That's good. But then it also enables them to base out on the floor and cartwheel. So it's a curse. What you have to start doing is keeping the blessing and removing the curse by closing your elbows. So you go open, close, open, close, open, close. We start off in here. I start off open. Once his head goes over my head and I start to lift so his feet leave the mat, I close my elbows. And now when he goes to reach for the floor, it's impossible. And we get a nice throw as a result. Let's have a look at how this would look from the feet. He comes out, takes his grips. I get my first grip on my training partner. He comes out, takes his grips.
I get my second grip on, and we work from this position. Now, I bring my body in close, I hit my little jump step, my foot goes in, and we push the elbows in. I'm going to come closer to the camera, and I'm going to position our bodies. Watch my right arm on his left arm. Just a little bit further away, Giancarlo. From here, he comes in, gets his grip. He takes his second grip, I go in, and I fix up double sleeves. I come in nice and close. I bring my foot up. And did you see I pushed in on my training partner's arm so that Giancarlo finds himself in a situation where he gets taken forward onto his toes, his elbows get open, and then his arm gets pushed in, and he's forced forward into a forward roll. Okay? That cue of opening and closing elbows is one of the keys to developing a successful front tomoe-nage. One more time. Let's take it in this angle here, Giancarlo, so you can see the crucial right arm. He comes in, he makes his first grip. I come in, he grips, I grip. From this position, I bring my head in close. I separate his feet, I bring my body in close, foot comes up, and we sit up into the throw. This is the key point of the elbows. Elbows up, elbows close, he can't cartwheel, and he flies into the move. If you're going to be a master of the front tomoe-nage, there is a movement which I strongly encourage you to invest time and thought into. This is a backwards shuffle. You will probably remember me saying several times earlier in this video that the easiest time to throw someone is when you generate movement in the direction of the throw. Guys, it's really hard to throw a perfectly static opponent. I'm not going to say it's impossible. You can do it, but it's damn hard. Okay, you make everything much easier if you first get your opponent moving in the direction of the throw, or you create movement in one direction and he resists so strongly that you take him in the opposite direction and put him down. Those are the two precursors to most throws. Okay, so if I get my opponent, moving in this direction, it's going to be pretty easy for me to go under the tomoe-nage because he's moving in that direction. Okay? If I get my opponent pulling back and resisting, he knows I want to throw him in that direction, so he pulls back with everything he's got. So I try to take him here, and I feel him digging his heels in and resisting. That's going to make it easy for me to take him in the opposite direction. So that's how we use movement to set up throws. It's either you get him moving in the direction of the throw, or you make him resist so hard because he's afraid of that you take him in the opposite direction. That's the basic way in which movement is used. Now, how does this apply to front tomoe-nage? Well, there is a very interesting and very subtle form of movement that is often used by masters of the old-fashioned front tomoe-nage, and it makes a real difference in your performance. It's a subtle thing. It's not easy to observe with the eyes, but it has a big effect on your sports performance. It's a backward shuffle. What you do is you just do this and just walk backwards. I want you to watch Giancarlo's feet. If we lock up in here, Giancarlo, just dig into the ground with your feet, okay? Here, he's set and his weight is on his heels. But if I just walk back like this, there we go, his weight comes onto his toes. You don't have to move very far. I just walk and I get his weight coming forward. If I can make Giancarlo stumble forward, I can throw him. Okay? Guys, you're not trying to do anything crazy here. You're not trying to yank people across the mat. Okay? So all we do is we just dig our head in, and then from here, strong body Giancarlo, I just start walking backwards a little bit. And I just bring his weight forward onto his toes. Okay? As I feel his base breaking, this is the perfect position for me to take my foot off the floor and take him up and over. Okay? If you begin with a little backward step, you will be delighted how many more people you can throw than if you just go from static. Okay? I'm not going to say it's impossible to throw from static. You can do it. It can be done. But it's a lot easier if you just make him walk a little bit. Nothing crazy. Just make him step, stumble, and suddenly you'll throw a lot more people. So one more time.
We grip up. From here, I just walk. I stumble them on. Now we're in the perfect position to go in. I take my foot off the floor, second foot jump, and there's a nice tomoe-nage down to the mat. That little stumble step, shuffling backwards, make a big difference in your performance with the front tomoe-nage. We've been through a lot of details on tomoe-nage, and the reason for that is simple, because I consider tomoe-nage to be one of the three kings, the three most well-adapted throws or takedowns for the sport of jiu-jitsu, most suitable for our rule set, the one with the most overlap, the one which takes the least risk and has the highest possible reward with the least amount of risk for the unique rules and directives of the sport of jiu-jitsu. Now, one of the most important rules and directives of the sport of jiu-jitsu is the 3-second rule. The idea is that in jiu-jitsu, you don't score with the throw itself. What gets you the score is the aftermath of the throw, 3 seconds afterwards. You can score an advantage if you have no control over the end of the throw, but you can't score points. The only way you score points is if you control your opponent 3 seconds after the throw and demonstrate control to the referees. This means to some degree you must land either on top of your opponent or in a situation where you could get hooks in and score a rear mount, for example. That's not easy. It's not easy to throw someone and then stay on top of them for 3 seconds. So we've got to have some kind of operation here. Let's start off with a demonstration of a throw that would score nothing in the sport of jiu-jitsu, but which would score in, say, judo or sambo. Okay, Yoko tomoe-nage. We come in, we grip up, we get our opponent into a throwing position, and from here I come through and around and throw. Okay? How many points did I just score?
Well, in judo, I threw him pretty much on his side, so probably somewhere between a yuko and a wazari. Okay? In jiu-jitsu, you just scored maybe an advantage, but no points. Because at no point did I get up on top of my opponent and enforce a top demonstration of control, either behind my opponent's elbows in turtle position or on top of him, chest to chest. You can see there's a sense in which the aftermath of the takedown is very different in the scoring criteria, very different in jiu-jitsu than in other grappling arts. That would have been a very nice score in a judo match, but little to nothing in a jiu-jitsu match. It's very important that we pay attention to the aftermath of a throw in the sport of jiu-jitsu, and we get some kind of control advantage after the throw that actually translates the throw into points instead of just a flashy move that scores nothing. So, what does that mean? Ideally, the ideal situation is that we land on top of our opponent. Okay, so in a fantasy world where everything turned out perfectly, it might look something like this. We lock up with our training partner, we go forwards into some form of Yoko tomoe-nage, and we end up in the mounted position. Okay, that's a nice fantasy, but it's not really likely to happen on anyone with any skills whatsoever. Okay, much more likely is that you will end up in scramble positions where you want to have some kind of advantage over your opponent so that you can get a score. It may not look as pretty as that, but you'll get a score. My recommendation to you is simple. When you come out of the throw, get your head higher than your opponent's head. It doesn't have to look pretty and perfect and you finishing in a perfect mounted position in order to score. The reality is, in most cases, it ain't going to be like that. It's not going to be like a Hollywood movie where you just throw the guy and you end up in the perfect mounted position. In fact, normally the aftermath of the throw is a little messier than that. What I'm going to recommend to you is you come up with your head high. Okay, that should be your minimum goal. So, from a situation where we start off, going into Yoko tomoe-nage. From here, as I go through on my training partner, I'm going to get a good throwing action and send my man through. and I finish here. I do not finish mounted on him, but my head is higher than his head. So when Giancarlo goes to get up, my head is higher than his. Good, get up, buddy. And I will be able to enforce the throw. Even if he brings his legs in and puts me back in guard, at least I had top position, and I score. Okay? If Giancarlo goes to stand up, it's hard because I control sleeve and lapel. Okay? You got to stand up, Giancarlo. You always got to get that top position on your opponent. Again, in an ideal world, you would throw your opponent and land in a perfect mounted position or a perfect side control position. I'm not going to say that can't happen. It can, but at black belt championship level, it's very unlikely. Much more likely is just to whip out of the throw and come up into a seated position. Just watch my movement out of the throw in this case. Okay, my opponent comes out like so. I go into my training partner's throw, send him through, and I just finish here, so that my head is higher than his head. Now, Giancarlo goes into a scramble, going to get up, and at least I keep my top position. Okay? So I get my score. I hold him down for 3 seconds. Conceivably, he could turn to a turtle position, and then I'll be on his back, and I'd still score. Okay? So if we're in a position where I go into my throw, and I see my training partner's throw, and he comes up and turtles, and go behind our training partner, we still get a score. Okay? This is just as much a scoring position in jiu-jitsu as if I put his back on the floor. So, my recommendation to you, when you come out of the throw, come up seated with your head high. Don't make this common mistake. A lot of guys fixate on the throw and they stop with the throw. They put their back and shoulders on the ground, they make a nice throw, and they finish here. Then the guy just gets right back up and now you got to go to open guard. Okay? It's not the end of the world, you're in open guard. But you had a nice opportunity to score points there, you kind of lost it. Come up with your head high. Finish like this. So that when he goes to get up, it's easy for you to take top position over him. Again, guys, it's unrealistic that this will happen. Okay? You watch a demonstration, it looks so beautiful, right? I'll throw you in out of position. Okay? You see a demonstration, you see a guy come out, throws, and from here, whoops the guy over, and comes up in the mounted position, arm bars, etc., and it looks so nice. Okay? But realistically, your opponent's going to elbow escape, it's going to put you in guard. It's unlikely you're going to just throw a guy directly into the mounted position. He would have to be a complete neophyte for that to happen. So a much more realistic way to operate is to come up to a seated position and get up to your knees. So we come up initially seated and then pull onto your knees so that you're above your opponent with the gi manipulation to keep him flat or to go behind him and get a score. So one more time. A realistic way to finish your throws with Tomoe-nage. He comes out, gets his grip. I come out, I get my grip. We're gripped up and we're ready to play. I go across my training partner, I throw all the way through, then I finish up here. Okay? He goes to get up, you got the gi. Even if he turned successfully, you're in the position to go behind and get you a score. Okay? That's a very realistic and practical way to finish your Tomoe-nages and get to your score. Come up seated. Pull to your knees. And from here, you're almost guaranteed to win. Worst case scenario, you've got a very athletic opponent, and he just springs to his feet. You will still be in an advantage position to go for another takedown, and able to sustain attacks to put him down. So we have a very athletic opponent. I snap the grips off, I pull him around the corner, I come in, he gets back up to his feet, and from here, I go back in, I hit a second throw. Okay? And you just put so much sustained attack, your opponent can't follow attack after attack after attack, and you put him down.